And Top Story is always brought to you by Gasim Cement, the nation builder. Is also brought to you by Vodafone. Together we can. Now, the quality of COVID-19 testing at the Kotoka International Airport by Frontier Healthcare Services is tonight under intense scrutiny as members of parliament raise alarm about several false positives. The minority has repeatedly complained processes leading to the award of the contract to the firm are illegal and have demanded a parliamentary probe into it. Even before the probe happens, MPs are raising new concerns about the quality of the tests being carried out by the firm. Now, many Ghanaians arriving from abroad have raised issues with the test, with the positive tests. We've seen this on social media. Ningo Prampram MP Samuel George took this to the floor of Parliament today and wants the health minister summoned over the issue.
Just to draw your attention to that. And then secondly, to find out if the business committee will be minded to bring the Minister for Health to this house in the course of the week on the growing challenges that Ghanaians and foreigners are facing with the antigen test that is being done by Frontiers Healthcare Limited. The growing number of false positives appears to be becoming a certain cause of worry because people are testing negative less than 72 hours before they arrive Ghana. They arrive Ghana, and those are PCR tests. They arrive Ghana, the antigen test at the airport finds them positive. They are forced to go into a hotel.
This is not a statement time.
Well, the minority leader, Haruna Idrisu, agrees. He's asking for more investigations into the matter.
Mr. Speaker, we further expect that the ad hoc committee report on the Sputnik V should be programmed for our consideration before we adjourn sine die. Then, Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Sam George have raised a very significant issue. Mr. Speaker, we should give it some attention in the public interest about COVID tests and persons challenging the medical and scientific veracity of the tests of PCR and antigen tests. Mr. Speaker, imagine your wife had traveled or your mother was coming and is subjected to a test that is questionable or the outcome of it that is questionable. That will separate the families not based on scientific merit. Some concerns have been raised about the quality of the tests conducted by Frontier Health Services. We have issues with this procurement, but we deserve better as a country, and this House deserves to ask relevant and legitimate questions, including positioning Evans Mensah to play an independent supervisor role. So, Mr. Speaker, it's a matter if the Health Minister, together with the Ministry for Aviation, will respond to. That will be important. Mr. Speaker, my final, as I indulge you again, is matters relating to fertilizer. Either a shortage of it or...
So that's to say, Haruna Idrisu there is a minority leader. The majority leader had an intervention. His was clear. Chairman Sabonsu says nowhere in the world we can find a situation where such tests can be categorized as 100% accurate. He's cautioning against anyone running down Ghana's COVID testing at the airport.
There's nowhere in the world where anybody can vouch 100% for the integrity of these equipment. There's no way in the world. So let's not rubbish what is happening here. I think I'll relate to a specific incident that happened just about 5 days ago. A university don had led a team to Germany of all places. And when they got there, they submitted themselves to the COVID test. Just when they were coming, they submitted themselves to a test in the hospital facility. All of them were negative. They got to the airport just less than 6 hours after they submitted themselves to the hospital facility. Got to the airport and they had to submit themselves again. They showed their results. They said no, they should submit themselves again. And when they did, the investigator who was leading the team was found out to be have tested positive within a space of 6 hours. And he couldn't believe it. They went home, submitted to a second test at another hospital. It came out negative. What it means is that there is something wrong. What it means is that there's something wrong somewhere. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm not too sure that the attempt by some people to run down our facilities is a good effort. It's certainly not. It's certainly not. And let's not try to relate to matters that we don't know. Because I hear somebody say that it's a fact. What fact do you know? Please, this is a matter about Ghana. Let's not do that. Let's not go on that path. So please, if the minister has to also come and relate to it, so be it. But let's not go on our own frolic to run the country down. It doesn't do anybody any good. The Speaker, having said so,
Well, the MP for Ningo Prampram who raised the issue joins us on the telephone line right now. Also joining me is the chairman of the Health Committee in Parliament, Dr. Ayew Afriyie. Dr. Ayew Afriyie, let me start with you. The call is to probe this. Haruna Idrisu says, let's investigate this even further. Sam George says, bring the health minister to the floor to explain. Are you in support of those suggestions and moves?
I'm not privy to the issues. What are the issues that you spoke about, please?
Fundamentally, the quality of the testing at the airport by Frontiers, the concern on the floor today by Sam George, as supported by Haruna Idrisu, is that it's producing too many false positives and it raises questions about the quality.
I disagree for us to put politics to this issue. I think that these are very scientific and technical, which we can't do politics with, which of course needs understanding, dispassionate positions on the issues. For me, when somebody tests at the airport and it so happens that you are positive, what does that mean? We are negative, what does that mean? What is the objective of testing at the airport? The objective of testing at the airport is to reduce the import of coronavirus into the country. Okay, so we are a vulnerable country. We are a developing country. COVID is from the West. And therefore, we just want to protect the poor people. We the poor ones in Ghana, from the influx or the widespread of COVID. Okay, that is the objective at the airport. Now, if you're talking about positivity, it is possible that, one, let me tell you about the errors. If you are talking about false positives, which I admit it is possible, there could be false positives. Now, because I don't want to do politics with this issue, if you are testing somebody, you pick a sample, there could even be error, and you can come to realize that it was false positive. It's possible about that. Okay, that is one scenario. It is possible that you can have PCR negative, you sit on a flight, and then you have the infection, and upon arrival, you go and do an antigen test. It will be positive. And therefore, you doing it in your country that was negative does not mean that on a flight which has closed circulation, which for that matter, we don't have any rule for which people put a mask on their nose. People can do it very well, some can't. Either ways, you can have infections in a way. And for that matter, that subjective arrangement of mask on your noses means that you are so clear that upon arrival, you cannot be positive. So when you are saying false positive, yes, it is the case. No antigen equipment in this part of the world, and for all those experts hearing me, and I repeat, no antigen testing equipment, that's point of care equipment, is 100% with sensitivity and specificity. Now, if we talk about specificity, that is the probability that you are negative and you are truly negative. We talk about sensitivity, is the probability that you are positive and you are entirely positive. Now, with WHO, and with all the experts hearing me now, you would bear me out. The World Health Organization recommends that point of care equipment should have antigen. That's antigen sensitivity of 70%, 7 out of 10 testing. That is positive, and truly positive is okay. And 3 may be negative, it is no matter. You can use the equipment. So according to WHO, you can be 70% with your equipment. However, in Ghana, you must be 97%. So for Ghana, the requirement of using that equipment is so much higher than WHO. That is actually why many people have testing kits and they cannot use it in Ghana because the FDA, you will not pass.
I guess the next follow-up question with this disclosure, is the testing that we're doing at Kotoka International Airport meeting the standard you just mentioned we have in Ghana?
Absolutely. The FDA grants you, and every week they go to site assessment. And every 10th of the test you do, you must confirm the antigen with the PCR. And absolutely so they pass. Now, Ghana's FDA standard is way above WHO. And as I speak, let your producer go and check. I mean, the US and several other countries allow the influx of antigen equipment in the UK, and they have now been overwhelmed with a lot of infection because a lot of home kits don't work well. A lot of home kits don't work well.
Doctor, you just stay with me for a second. Mr. George, if this disclosure is what it is, then what really is the concern then?
It looks like Dr. Ayu has not gotten the crux of our position. Nobody is questioning the sensitivity or specificity of the machines and all the really technical issues he's going into. What we are simply saying is that the regime that exists currently needs to be looked at. And that's why we're calling the health minister to come in. It's a policy issue. When I test negative 72 hours, 48 hours before I board a flight to Ghana, and I did a PCR test, that shows I'm negative. We're seeing increasing cases of persons arriving at Kotoka with negative reports or test results who do the antigen test by Frontiers Healthcare. It comes out that they are positive. The protocol currently says that once you are tested positive, we must quarantine you in a hotel designated by the government at your cost for a minimum of 3 days. After 3 days, even when you still test positive, they let you go. What we are saying is people are beginning to contest the positivity test that results that are coming out of Frontiers Healthcare. At the cost of the passenger, the regime should allow you to have a second test, a second opinion at your cost. That is a PCR test. So if I arrive and I am dead sure that I've observed all the protocols, 72 hours after I've done the test, I should not have tested positive. And I come in and your antigen test says I am positive. Do not confine me immediately to a 3-day test regime, a hotel confinement. Allow me pay for a PCR test to be done as a second opinion, because Dr. Ayu would agree with me that the PCR's efficacy is higher than the antigen test. In fact, if you listen to the submission of the majority leader when I raised this issue, when he used the example of the university don, his position vindicates what we are asking for. He says that the university don, when he went to the airport with his negative result, tested positive at the airport. When he went, he was allowed to go home and do another test. Within 6 hours, it showed that he was negative. That tells you that there's a problem with the antigen test, because the gestation period of COVID will not allow you to be negative 72 hours ago, positive 72 hours later, and within another 6 hours or 72 hours, test positive. That is not how COVID works. So all we are saying is the protocol must allow that persons who arrive and for whom the antigen testing at Kotoka says are positive should be allowed to undertake an independent private second opinion with a PCR test. That is what we are asking to be done.
Dr. Fiye, you support that?
Oh, okay. Evans, I've listened to, I had to rise to constituency, so I was not in the chamber, but I've listened to some to a point, and I would disagree with him on some point, and I'll agree with him on a certain point. I'm just being very objective on the issue. I've always said, when it comes to health, as a medical doctor, I don't know politics. And the truth is just the truth. Now, one bit of this is what you have to know. When you do PCR and it's negative, and you sit on a flight, and you have the viral particle. Now, research is showing that between 0 hours to 1 day, the PCR itself is not effective in picking, but the antigen can always pick it up. And as I say, I repeat it. For everybody who is hearing me, I like to do a lot of empirical work, and I like arguments based upon facts because of my profession that I'm trained. So actually, if you look at PCR, within the latent period, that is between 0 on touching your cell to 24 hours, PCR can pick you negative, but antigen can pick you positive. Because antigens work most when the antigens are high in you. And for that matter, where PCR is not picking between 0 to 1 day, and PCR works well between 1 to 3 days and thereafter. Until when antigens are off, that is from after 14 days that PCR, So really here, you see that if somebody sits on a flight and it's negative, and you arrive in Ghana, and you had the viral particle, what happens is that before the RNA keeps replicating or the virus keeps replicating, you are going to have a time that the antigen can pick you positive. And however, within that period of 24 hours or so, then the PCR can pick you negative. So I want to make it clear. And I like a forum by Joy FM for how to have this intellectual discourse. And we will show our research and evidence to speak to it. So you see that we are doing research-based talking. Now, so the PCR itself can be flawed by antigen between hours of 0 to 24 hours within a flight to arrive. Okay, let's take it there. But looking at the argument of Sam George, as I listen to him, what he's saying is that, is it a case that I arrive in your country, I do antigen, it's positive. Oh, I did it in my country and it was negative, but I want to contest this. So can there be PCR availability? Well, airport clinic does PCR. I think this is a policy thing. I would not object to it.
So you support that policy change?
I mean, my patient have a right for opinion. So if indeed I have done a test and I say, I can spend the next $100 to do a PCR, maybe you will leave this country because maybe we would allow airport clinic to also confirm over there so that I will pay and to be sure. Well, this is the policy thing. I don't see where we will have to get difficulty in as a suggestion. But if you go and you actually contest the antigen PCR, you should be very careful about that argument. Then you will be flawed totally. But given the fact that I want to go home, I'm so excited to be in Ghana. You have done a test. I'm so sure that I was negative. Well, you say I have positive. You know what? I want to pay. Get PCR done for me there. Well, that is okay. Now, also, we should know and ask if Frontiers are PCR. So if the policy is going to amend to get people the choice to do PCR at their own cost, really, for me, I think it's acceptable. Okay. Also, to go to the point that it's mandatory for you to go to a hotel, Evans, is not the case at all. Ghanaians, when you are positive, Pantine, they have newer rooms that allow for Ghanaians to be there at no cost. People sometimes want to choose to be in a hotel. It is only when you make a decision to be in a hotel that you are incurring or raising the issue of cost on you. But the state is saying that we have made rooms available for you here, and they are clean rooms. So if you are a Ghanaian and you choose that one, you are free. You won't pay anything. But you are saying that I prefer a hotel. Now, initially last year when the hotels were not functioning, many of them allowed COVID patients to come in there. Currently, Tempisi, hotels no, because now they are having clients coming in there. And the stigma, so M Plaza has offered, by my understanding from the task force, M Plaza has offered that, well, regardless of whether we have clients or not, we will be available at a moderate cost for COVID-tested patients. So it is not as if the state has provided you a hotel where you prefer Tank Palace or Moving Pig. It is because not all of them are entering the scheme. Okay. So the one available is what you would take.
Let's return to the
impression as if it is so mandatory that when you arrive as a Ghanaian, you should go into this hotel. It is not the case.
Let's return to the basic concern. And you said that you are not opposed to...
Please, your voice. Please.
Sorry, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. So you say fundamentally you're not opposed to changing the policy so people who want to contest their results at the airport.
Is this really a problem?
No, I'm just stating just for the record, and I guess I guess the
somebody
next step.
arrives.
The next step is the next step.
Trust me, I'm positive.
Yes.
Okay.
Dr. Free, just the next step, because you are the chairman of the health committee. You wield a lot of influence, and for many people traveling in and out of Ghana, this is a big concern for them. So the question is, will you push for this to be implemented beyond supporting it verbally on air?
Oh, definitely. It's not even beyond supporting it verbally on air. My friends know my liberal stance on issues, and absolutely, if the policy, the health minister comes, I will support the point that if you do antigen testing, and then they have PCR equipment in the airport, and the person can pay just to be sure about that, to be confirmed. I mean, for me, it should be optional. I've done antigen, I'm positive. Okay, I can pay the next dollar for you to confirm. If I'm confirmed positive, okay, then you can check me to where you want to take me to.
Yeah.
I think this one really,
Mr. George, does that settles it for you, does it?
But the misconception, as if everything is false, but it's not true, because the same airport
Dr. Free, just a second.
Delta variants,
yes,
that the genomic sequence confirmed indeed.
True. So just stay on for.
Just not to rubbish our system. I strongly object to people thinking that.
Just stay on for me, Dr. Free. Just a second. I need to give Mr. George a quick word on the fundamental point that you've expressed your position on. Mr. George, does that settle it for you as a chairman? He says he supports that policy change.
Evans, you see, Dr. Free is just running around, and that's the same thing that happened in the chamber with the leadership of the majority. We are not playing politics here. Nobody is asking about the efficacy of the systems. I don't know why they are so jittery about this. If they just calm down and listen to all we are asking for today. The House is rising on the 6th, which is next week. The Senate Day. The business statement for next week was late. There was nowhere in the business statement where the health minister would appear before us. And that's why, as representatives of the people, it is not only Ghanaians who are coming to Ghana. There are people who have business that they have to turn around in Ghana within 48 hours and go. The person arrives, you say he's negative, he cannot get a second opinion that could clear him to have his meeting. By the time he does the 3 days, the reason for coming to Ghana is wasted. And this is all we are asking. So if Dr. Free agrees with the policy direction, they should bring the minister to the floor of the House in the course of the week. Let the minister come and announce a policy change. That's all we are interested in. No long talk. This is not politics. This is about making travel as easy and as comfortable in this trying period. That's all we're asking for.
Okay.
So if the chairman of the Health Committee of Parliament is amenable to this position, he should lend his voice to it. On Monday or Tuesday, the health minister should appear. The speaker will give him an opportunity to make a statement on the floor and let him give us this new policy direction so that travelers into Ghana know that even if an antigen test shows that you are positive, there is the opportunity at your cost to undertake a second opinion. That's all we're asking for.
Okay.
There's no politics in here. There is nothing for them to be jittery about.
Mr. Free, I just have 60 seconds, so you can make that input. Yes.
Ivan. Hello, Ivan.
I can hear you. 60 seconds, very quickly.
Yes, if you are tested positive with antigen, and they confirm, you do a PCR to confirm, and the PCR say you are negative, it could be between 0 to 24 hours. That doesn't mean you should go home. Please, there's a difference between confirmatory testing and then as a passport to go home. No, it is wrong. If you are negative, if you are positive with antigen and you are negative with PCR, you still have to be quarantined because it is likely that the PCR will pick after 24 hours. So please, let's not confuse mandatory quarantine to their willingness to do a confirmatory PCR.
Okay, gentlemen, I'm grateful that you joined me. I think the two positions are clear. There's a certain agreement that a certain policy change will have to be activated. But the question is, okay, so that's the last point that Dr. Free had raised. I want to bring in an expert because, of course, there are two politicians on this matter. But I want to bring in an expert into this. He's a virologist, Dr. Augustina Silvakin. Doc, thank you for your time here on Top Story. So give us the scientific answer to the question. We've just had a change in policy, so people who want to contest the result of the antigen test at the airport will have the freedom to do a PCR. But the key question then becomes, as was just raised, if the antigen test gives you positive and a PCR confirmation test gives you negative, what happens? Well, what's your scientific answer to this issue?
Yeah, good evening, Evans. Your line is very, very faint. Hello?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, but
Okay.
it's quite faint.
Okay. I don't know if you heard my question. Hello, Dr. Silvake. Did you hear my question?
Yes.
Sorry. Hello, Dr. Silvake. Let's try and rectify that because I need to hear the expert opinion on this matter. It's very critical for people who are traveling in and out in the country as this issue possibly may be resolved next week in Parliament. Dr. Silvake?
Yes, Ivan.
I'm having feedback. So if you're listening on the radio, kindly turn it off for me. Hello, Doc.
Hello, Ivan.
I can hear you, yes. I wonder if you heard the question.
What was the question, please? The line was quite faint.
Okay. I was asking there's an issue right now about the antigen test results and the need to get a PCR at the Kotoka International Airport, rather, and the need to get a PCR confirmation because of people's concerns over the antigens giving you false positives, right? But then there's a second leg of the argument, which is what if you get a positive antigen result and then a confirmative negative PCR result? Should the person be allowed to go into the population? And what do you do there? What's your scientific, answer to these interesting questions?
Yeah, Ivan, thank you very much, and good evening to your listeners. So the first thing we all need to know is that there's nothing like a bad test, or we can never refer to a test as a bad test. It depends on the purpose or the reason why you want to implement that test. The second thing is that every country has its own policies, rules, and regulations pertaining to sensitivity levels and specificity levels. And then when it comes to the PCR has something known as the limit of detection. So really, you may be tested, or you may have tested negative in country A. You board a flight, you get to country B. You may actually test positive by antigen, the antigen test. Indeed, in some cases, depending on the viral load, so that's how come I mentioned the limit of detection. So the PCR in itself has a limit to which it can detect the presence of a virus, but then the antigen will be able to pick it up. So there's a lot of dynamism when it comes to PCR and antigen testing. Again, like I said, it depends on the regulations within your country. For example, in Ghana, we know that our FDA decided that when it comes to the use of antigen tests, we need a very, very highly specific test as well as a highly sensitive test. Indeed, even higher than what the WHO recommends. However, if you get into Ghana and you are tested positive by antigen test, I think, it depends on our policy directions. And this really falls within the remit of the Ghana Health Service. Do we want to, this time, do a second antigen test, or even decide that then let's implement a PCR test? So all these things need to be, decided and confirmed by
from an expert point of view as a virologist, and because of the controversy with people coming in and say, but I did a PCR test in London, I got to Accra, and your antigen test says my PCR test in London says I'm negative. I get to Accra, my antigen test says I'm positive, and then the contest becomes, okay, I want to do in Accra a second PCR test to confirm this. As from a scientific point of view, would you recommend that?
So this can be done, but I think that even beyond recommending a second or a confirmatory PCR test, we all need to realize that, these viruses or pathogens, they have something known as incubation period. So the fact that you tested negative by test A or diagnostic test A, maybe PCR or even an antigen test in country A, and you go to Ghana, you tested positive by antigen, it does not negate the effectiveness of our antigen test at the airport. So like I said, I cannot really stick my neck out and say yes, but this can easily be recommended, and it depends on us as a country. But the key thing is that the fact that you have been tested negative by PCR in London, in the US, in Australia, you get to Ghana and you are tested positive by our antigen test, does not mean that our antigen test is inferior. It is highly specific and highly sensitive.
Doc, thank you very much. Virologist Dr. Silva King there helping us trying to navigate this issue, which, of course, as we've heard, possibly the health minister will have to come to the floor to probably settle it through a policy change. Well, Ghana Connect starts right now.